I literally spent 6 months after hours when everyone was sleeping between the hours of 10 and 1 a.m. studying about medical aesthetics. And the only way I could was trying to find stuff online, and there really wasn't anything out there. And I told them straight up, I think I'm going to be the face for Canada. This is like my plan. So I've got to come out swinging, and I've got to be ready to know everything I can.
As our podcast is related to business, I'm now interested in what is the business idea behind it, and how do you monetize your online activities?
Different people have different ways to look at social media. Some people, they prefer YouTube. Some people prefer Instagram or TikTok. So that at least different channels will give different reaches to different variety of people.
Can you give a brief overview what you can make on revenue on these channels to earn like 20,000 a month?
Yeah, absolutely.
Today on my show, Dan and Michele Julien, and if you haven't lived under a rock, you probably know both of them from YouTube, Instagram, or Patreon, hugely successful. Let me start with Michele, ladies first. Michele is the wife and business partner of Dan.
Correct.
And the mastermind alongside Dan behind.
She's the brains.
She's the brain behind
Yes.
the various companies. With 20 years of experience in various fields, starting off in college education, specializing in cosmetology and business-related classes, she then moved into a corporate role with a luxury brand, excelling in sales, education, and business development. She then played a pivotal role in assisting salons and spas to optimize profitability and growth. And during the pandemic, she created an innovative and comprehensive business plan to establish a clinic from the ground, successfully managed all aspects of the clinic creation from finances, negotiations, layout, and interior design. And then Dan, my friend, he is the co-founder and CEO of Danesthetics Medical Design, medical director for Perfect Medical Aesthetics Center. He's on the Canadian Board of Aesthetic Medicine. He's mainly an international speaker and superstar, alongside Tim Pierce, clearly one of the biggest and first YouTubers within our aesthetic community, and he has a big community on Patreon. In the meanwhile, Dan's and Michele's social media and Patreon activities gain more revenue than the aesthetic clinic. I'm looking forward to this conversation. Welcome, Dan and Michele, to my show, Aesthetics and Biz.
Hello.
Thanks for having us, Felix. This is exciting, man.
Thank you so much. Great to have you here. Looking forward to see you soon in Switzerland. That will
Mm-hmm.
be
40-some days.
Only a few days left, yes. Dan and Michele, what made you move into aesthetics?
Okay, so I think I'm gonna have to go with this one here.
Yeah.
So I've always wanted a business since I was 19, I think, 19, 20, when my dad ended up purchasing this book. It was Rich Dad, Poor Dad book. He had a bunch of apartments already, and he's like, you should read this book. And then I read it, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to get into business. That's right. That's right.
We will put it in the captions. It's a very great book. It's a great
Yeah, it was a
book.
great book, and it just opened up my eyes, and it stayed with me literally for 20 years, and I just couldn't get it off my mind. And right when I went into nursing, I was thinking how, even as a registered nurse, how could I get a business? How can I build a business? Couldn't figure that out. Went into Nurse Practitioner. I thought maybe I could have my own, I don't know, practice somewhere, but eventually found out the only way that was likely going to happen through primary care was going to be maybe a non-for-profit model, which a lot of work. I just I couldn't see that happening. And, but as a result, because I had this drive, I would pick up a lot of side jobs, and I had a lot of energy, and I'd always say yes to all these side projects. And every manager, employer would always ask me, like every 6 months, like, okay, well, what's your goal here? Because you seem like you have a lot of ambition, a lot of drive. And I would tell them all straight out. I said, like, listen, one day I plan to have my own business. And they'd all, push me. They'd let me know. They're like, I'm just letting you know, everyone thinks they want a business, but it's a lot of work. And I'm like, I know, but it's just something that somehow it's going to be on my mind. And I couldn't really figure it out. But a series of years later, after developing a hepatitis C program, was weird. So I was working as a nurse practitioner in primary care. I had a background in infectious disease doing HIV. And because of that, there was a new medication coming out called, I think, Harvoni or something. It was like one pill once a day to cure hepatitis C. And it was groundbreaking. And as a result, the CEO of the clinic I was working at he was like, listen, we could be the first clinic in North America to treat hepatitis C out of the hospital. And he's like, I think I want you to run it. So I was like, oh, I don't know anything about hep C. He's like, that's okay. I'll get you, the tools needed. So what I did is I just took a bunch of courses internationally. And these courses were really made for gastroenterologists, subspecialty infectious disease docs. I'm like this young nurse practitioner going to these conferences, and they're like, what are you doing here? And I'm like, I've got to learn about the liver. And these are all massive liver conferences, EASL, ASLD. And I would go to them consistently, and it gave me the courage to build this clinic. We were like this groundbreaking clinic for University of Ottawa Health Services at that time. And it gave me the confidence to go and teach all the family health teams, all the physicians about hep C, how to treat them, how to send them to us, what they did for monitoring and whatnot. And that gave me a lot of confidence. It boosted something there, but I still didn't have the tools for the business. Later on, a few years later, when I turned about 33, 34, I kind of got this little feeling like I don't know if this business thing is going to ever happen, but I was very much into sports. So I just decided to take sports to another level. I dedicated myself to this craft called like this game called squash. And I told myself this crazy goal. I wanted to be the best in Ottawa. And I wasn't even ranked at the time. And there was a lot of great squash players. So I found the best coach this woman was ranked world number 3 at one point, and I dedicated my life to her for 3 years. And that opened up everything for me for this mindset of basically what it takes to succeed. Because I thought with constant coaching, all of my lessons, practice every day, all of my training, it was going to be linear growth, and it really wasn't. It was very much a graph, right? A lot of losses, a lot of wins, losses, but it was sticking to the program and trusting the process to get to where you want to go. 3 years later, literally the month before I was about to finish, I had a nurse practitioner student training with me, and she's like, you got a lot of side jobs. She's like, you ever think about going in medical aesthetics? And I had friends who own clinics around here, and I said, yeah, I've asked them a few times. I said it really wasn't that busy, and as a nurse practitioner, I always needed to have a physician tied to me in a public setting, which is like, yeah, but in private, I found out, in our course, we found out that you can actually do this independently. I was like, there's no way. And that was a big spark. And she's like, yeah. So I was like, listen, I'm calling the college to confirm the next day. I called the college. They confirmed that I could be my own medical director. And it was as if an explosion went off inside of me. Basically, everything I took from going to those conferences, giving me the courage to speak to these physicians, understanding the grind, the process of what it took to get to another level of your sports career. I put that all together, and I knew that being in Ottawa was this weird niche. It was the capital of Canada, but it wasn't the biggest city. Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal were much bigger. They're already exploding on the scenes with medical aesthetics, and it was here already, but it didn't explode yet. So I said, that's it. I'm going to literally be the face of Canada because we are in the perfect setting. I feel confident that I could learn this craft and teach it to the world by YouTube, just as I did, for these other conferences or these other programs that I did. And as long as I stayed the course and stayed consistent, then I could be the face. And I just gave myself another 3-year push, similar to what I did with squash. And that was 5 years ago, and here we are today.
Fantastic. So did you start your YouTube account before you started your clinic?
Yes. Yeah, I was working. So our own clinic only happened 2.5 years ago. That was Michele that opened that up, and we opened that during the pandemic. I was working at another spa before, which was a regular spa. And Michele was actually the partner, Aveda partner at that time, and worked with them. That's how I got my in. And they knew my passion, and they thought, there could be a lot of revenue there for them, and they knew that was the future with regards to aesthetics, bringing in a medical aesthetics provider. So I started there.
But let's go back to the YouTube channel. How did you start it off on YouTube? And I just had a chat with Tiffany Hall. She's running this big conference in US, and she said it's quite complicated to learn how to teach on camera, inject at the same time, inject from the right angle, make sure everything is in the right order, safety and education, and everyone understands and see everything from the right angle. how did you get yourself into that? I assume you are a natural born talent for TV. Once I saw you, I first of all I thought you were a doctor, and I thought you were casted by Netflix or something like this, because or Disney. It was a
Yeah.
perfect, and your success tells a story of that. So
I appreciate that. I think, for me actually coming up, I wasn't an A student, growing up. I definitely kind of came from a broken family. There's 6 kids in our family, 4 different fathers. Like, I think when I was living with my mother up until grade 7, we were on welfare, which is public assistance. Then I moved with my dad. Like, it's very, very, this weird setting that I grew up in. And as a result, I always kind of had, I don't know, I kind of felt like I had to prove myself somehow. And I never really had a lot of, self-belief in myself until I got to university, because I did initially go to college for nursing because I didn't have the grades. And after that, whenever I met Michele, her primary care provider was a nurse practitioner. And I was like, what's this? So I talked to her. She's like, this is the future. You can practice independently, but you will have to go to university. You're going to have to. I was like, oh my God, university. I'd be like the first person in my family to go to university. I didn't know if I could make it. I had to get my grades up. So got my grades up in college, was able to go. But even then, through university, I kind of felt like, I don't know, I was almost faking it the whole time. And then one day I get like these grades back, and I told Michele.
It's a stats class. He's like, I think I'm the smart one. I said, well, you are.
And that the thing is we moved so much when I was younger. My purpose wasn't to get good grades. My purpose was just actually to fit in. So I would hang around, luckily, with the smart kids, but I just only wanted to pass. My whole objective was to pass. So now, because I have this objective to, get to university, I had to get good grades. So that happened, and then university opened up my eyes. And then after that, every employer of mine said I had a lot of potential, and that, you never hear that growing up in my environment. So whenever people said I had potential, that stays with you. And you're like, what does that mean? Like, how can I use that potential? And then at the last place, when I was working with this Hep C provider, the CEO, he told me, he's like, you're a nurse practitioner, but I think you were meant to be a physician. Here we are, let's make the best of it. And, I would hear these little things like that once in a while, and it gives you a lot of confidence, and it stays with you. So when people tell you these things, you can either kind of like put them to the side, or you can kind of roll with it. So that confidence helped. And then especially so that like the confidence of him saying that helped me get the courage to develop this hepatitis C program, gave me the courage to go out to other primary care providers, veteran family doctors who I am now trying to tell them how to test for Hep C, thinking they're going to quiz me. And eventually all that did was make me realize, sheesh, I know a lot more about hepatitis C than they do. And I'm more comfortable teaching to them. So that gave me all this confidence, all these little nitpicks, all these things that you develop and pick up throughout the years gave me the confidence to build a YouTube channel. So what I did was I approached medical aesthetics a little differently. Typically here, most people will take a program in the weekend and then they're encouraged to go and inject. But for me, I knew that I want to be this face, and I can't just put out content that is crap. Otherwise, I'm going to be picked apart by the plastic surgeons, the derms, the physicians, everyone out there. So before I was ever ready to actually put out a YouTube channel, for 6 months, with all these other side jobs that I literally had 4 jobs, by the way, while doing all these YouTube videos. I would do it when everyone was asleep. I would put the kids to bed. Michele would go to bed early.
Sorry for interrupting. That's a typical success story. It's related to mine. My childhood and my family background is similar, not the same, but similar. And this gives me so much fuel. And then once the first permission and confirmation comes in through good rates or feedbacks or whatever, it makes us thrive. And these kind of people who have to prove something to themselves, they are able to do like 5 jobs and something else aside, and they succeed. And I love this story because it should encourage so many people to really take off. But it's hard work. It's doing stuff. It's like you did. 4 jobs. I'm not sure if you had kids by then.
Yeah, we did.
Yeah.
2 kids.
Yeah, there you are. So yeah, that's tremendous. That's really tough, right? So yeah, but sorry for interrupting. Just wanted to.
No worries. So what happened was, instead of, just taking the course and taking off, I literally spent 6 months after hours when everyone was sleeping between the hours of 10 and 1 a.m. studying about medical aesthetics. And the only way I could was trying to find stuff online, and there really wasn't anything out there. So I would go to PubMed research. I would download some books on anatomy, on injections, memorize whatever I could, but then also try and figure out, understand what this medical aesthetics means to me.
Yeah.
Michele's dying over there. She's
No
coughing away.
problem.
So, so that basically gave me I had to understand not only how to inject, but I also had to understand why. So I needed to understand the aging process of the face. I need to understand what happens with the skin. Why do we get wrinkles? What happens to the fat pads? Some people are sinkers and saggers. What does that mean? What happens to the skull? What happens to the muscles? How does it morph? And then it's like, okay, now I kind of felt like at that point, nursing, before you're in nursing, going into nurse practitioner, nursing gives you a lot of tools in medicine, but you don't know what's really going on. You don't understand the diagnosis process.
Yeah.
So whenever I did take the nurse practitioner program, I was like this sponge. I was like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. I'm putting the pieces together to make the diagnosis. So that was kind of like almost my introduction. I studied on my own. I kind of felt like I got it, but now I've got to take the courses to make it all understand. So whenever I did take the courses, oh man, I was pounding them with so many questions. And these guys were like, wow, how long have you been doing this for? I'm like, I've never done it. I haven't even injected anyone. It's like, oh my God, you know so much about anatomy. And and I told them straight up, I think I'm going to be the face for Canada. This is like my plan. So I've got to come out swinging, and I've got to be ready to, to know everything I can. So once I felt all that was ready, and then I ended up going to MCAS right away. It was the first course, first international conference that I took. I was there again like another sponge. Just I had an agenda of what I needed to take because these courses weren't teaching that. And I had to understand different ways to analyze it, try it at the clinic. So I would try it on clients. And then I'd figure out what was really working, because a lot of these times they're putting on a show out there, and then you try it at home and you're like, well, that didn't work. Like, this actually doesn't make any sense. And then you start internalizing what makes sense. Then as soon as everything all clicks, that's when I'm ready to make my video. And that's when I made my first video. I just basically, I said, I'm going to show the world how I create I'm going to be a dermal fillers guy. So I would do sections, and I'm going to show them a little anatomy lesson, and also how I differentiate masculine versus feminine, certain angles to fine tune certain things. And I would make sure that I would stay humble. And Michele would make sure that she, kept me humble, and basically say, whenever I'm presenting, I want to make sure that I'm not saying I'm the best and this is the way to do that. What I would do is basically just say, this is how I do it. And if you guys want to take it as it is.
And isn't teaching others the best way to learn yourself?
100%. 100%. Most of the time, right? So anytime, especially at the beginning, even today, anytime that I post anything, I'm going to review it and assess it, make sure this makes sense, make sure that what I'm saying, isn't just, isn't wrong, first of all. But at the very beginning, I was also teaching myself at the same time. I'm like, okay, yeah, this is all coming together, and I need to remember this actually the next time whenever I am going to inject. And it was great because I still, providers today still tell me, I'm reviewing your videos right before I'm doing a treatment just to kind of refresh my mind.
Dan, how did your YouTube journey started and took off then in terms of success and numbers and likes and followings? I assume the first ones really wasn't seen and didn't grab a lot of
Oh no.
attention, or am I wrong? And then it took a while until it take off. Could you take us on that journey?
100%. So initially, I had this completely different vision for myself whenever I was doing my YouTube channel. I wanted something fun, very different. I didn't want anything too medical, as in too stuffy kind of, right? I thought it was going to be this fun thing that I could do, maybe play guitar, create a personality. Actually, initially, what I tried to do is I thought it was going to be something that I could have like a conversation, right? This is a
Yeah,
conversation about medical aesthetics. I'll have a glass of wine and chat about it, and create this, persona. And
yeah,
eventually, it didn't work, and it was fine. I didn't understand why it wasn't working, but Michele, she was basically, you know, I would ask her, she's like, I can't watch those videos. She's like, basically, they're super cringy, and it's not you. You're putting on this fake person, and I
Yeah.
would just, you know, let it go to the side. I'm like, well, you're not on social media. You don't know what you're talking about. I'm the one who's putting myself out there. Trust me, people want to see this. And then another colleague of mine who's a physician said, you know, you're really lucky. I can't believe the college is letting you do that. I think our college would have a hard time maybe with that because you're talking about medicine with alcohol. I was like, well, I'm not injecting on anyone. And they said, yeah, I think it's still an association. So I immediately called my lawyer. And the lawyer's like, you got to take all those down. So,
Yeah.
and it was a big eye opener because you forget, right? So even though you're not doing medicine at that time, you're always a reflection of the college, whether it's the College of Physicians
Yeah.
or College of Nurses. Like that's why, you know, if you're a drunken fool and you're acting, you know, foolish out there, someone could call the college and let them know, hey, by the way, Dan was being drunk and an idiot, and that's not what I think nurses should be like, and you can get reprimanded. So in the end, you know, that was a big eye opener, and at the same time, it was a stress reliever for me because then I didn't have to create this fake person.
Yes.
Um,
I think authenticity is the strongest skill and tool you can put out there. It's so there's a study measuring if you believe in energy between people and let's talk about frequencies and two positive people and people with positive energy amplify their frequency and amplitude and the strongest power in between people is not love or fun or whatever, it's authenticity. And I think I always try to remind myself on that. I think that's the most powerful thing you can do, being authentic.
100%. And I think I've seen a couple top providers in medical aesthetics burn out on social media as a result. I think
Yeah.
they were really just trying to make this crazy persona, and they were fun to watch, but at the same time I was like, man, this looks exhausting because I don't, unless that's truly who they are. But in the end, yeah, I've seen a couple of them burn out,
Yeah.
and it was a blessing at that point to basically switch it up because in the end is, you know, I just go out, post content that is genuine. I'm making sure that I'm having a general connection with the camera. A lot of people tell me that they're afraid of like doing these things on YouTube as well,
Yeah.
which I
Yeah.
find, you know, I get it. It's you need courage to basically do these things, but they're afraid of how they're going to sound on camera. And I always tell everyone, I'm like, well, you got as many tries as you want on camera, except for a podcast maybe. But like
Yeah. Yeah.
basically,
Yeah.
whenever you're doing a YouTube channel, if it doesn't look good, you just do it all over again.
It's the
Where
same
you've
for
got one
Instagram.
shot with the person you're talking to most of the time.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's the same for Instagram, and many people struggle with exactly this. And I get it because I can take so many attempts I want. I always find myself a little weird on a picture or on a video. How can you help us to overcome this? What would you give an advice? Just doing it many times to get used to it, or
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. You just so you know, right? So basically, I always look at, you know, people say you're charismatic. People will say you're charismatic, and then after that, I was like, well, what is charisma? What is charisma? And it's charisma is basically the combination of someone being warm, right? So you
yeah,
know, and at the same time, they know their craft. They know what they're talking about. So
yeah,
they're not giving you BS. So they're kind of like an expert in their field, or they're just basically knowledgeable. So that's
yeah,
basically, so if someone's knowledgeable and warm, that's charisma. And
yeah,
that's what I try to portray on camera. I just try and basically be myself. I feel like I've done enough of the research to have the knowledge, skill, and judgment to post whatever I'm posting. But at the same time, I'm a glass half full type of guy. So I just have to make sure that I portray that. And that is
yeah,
basically it. So I'll rewatch it. And if I feel like I'm tired, and sometimes I did have to redo the whole thing because it was like at 1 a.m. when I was doing these videos, I'm like, oh my God, I look dead. I was like, I gotta redo this whole thing. So that's it. You know, if you feel that you're not getting the connection, if you look tired, if you feel that there's no draw there, you just gotta
yeah,
redo it. And you gotta make sure that whenever you're watching that, you've got to have some type of feeling, whether it's, and some people who are really good in social media, they'll intentionally draw in a negative feeling just to create that, you know, tension and that draw and attention. I don't want that. I want people to have a positive feeling for me because that's who I am. So that's the attention I want. But you should be stirring some type of feeling, whether it's positive or negative, whatever you want. That will help. I always feel that if, go with who you are, because therefore you're not going to have to create a persona the whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Michele,
Yes.
how is it to work as a couple?
Actually, really easy. We don't see each other during the day. I see a closed
Oh,
doors most days. Yeah.
okay.
We don't do the same role at all. So it's just like a quick passing, and I don't know, we just mesh really well. It's just
Good.
we
Yeah, we can see that. That's great.
Mhm.
So I think, before we did this business, we've actually become much closer as a result of this business. So before, again, it was like I'd have all these jobs, and it was also, I'd like to play sports. I had friends, so I'd come home, and as a result, you're not quite as close, but it's still, we were married
Sure.
for, I don't know, 14 years at that point or something like that. So now it's been 18 years we're married, but we opened up that business 2.5 years ago. When that business was open, it was a big decision for us because we were literally dropping everything, right? So she
Yeah.
dropped her
Yeah.
career, I dropped all four of my jobs plus my career, and it was like, okay, we're doing this. We're literally banking on us. We're
Yeah.
both taking the sacrifice, and let's go through this journey together. And we both did it together. And as a result, it's been great. I get where the people will think, man, how can you like work with each other and live together and all this? But, you know, I tell people all the time, you're not going to burn out if you love doing what you're doing.
Yeah.
Like if and we love doing it together. So it's actually just bringing us closer.
And I do find like we spend a lot of time at the clinic, so it's kind of nice that we're already there together.
Yeah.
Like there's more time to connect on the real time than just clinic time.
Yeah.
So we'll sit down and have chit chat, review our day, and then have time to just like disconnect from the work day before we even come home. And when we come home, we're very present for our children.
Cool, cool. How does a day, Michele, how does a day look like briefly? So you both go to the clinic
Yep,
or
I have
you,
a driver.
That's me.
yeah.
Dan drives us to the clinic, and we both open, the day-to-day stuff, and then clients come, I greet, and we offer them something to drink, and then a chit chat. Dan does his clinical, and then I
Yeah.
finish the day with them.
She is so she says it's so easy. But basically, people come to get the injections or treatments by me, but they fall in love with Michele. And that's why they
Yeah.
stay, I think. They get quality service, but everything's done really well. So as you mentioned before, Michele opened up and created this whole business from the ground up.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that what aligned with us was, I really want to, because I want to be the face, I want everything as the best possible. I would go bankrupt to try and make this thing the best thing possible because I'd rather go all in and make it not work compared to kind of like going half in and then slowly bleeding out until you die.
Sure, sure, sure.
It's
Got it.
it's so she basically, and I actually initially wanted a big clinic, and she's like, no. She's like, we don't need a big clinic right now. What we need is a small clinic, but at the same time, it needs to be pristine. Everything's going to
Yeah.
be very tasteful, perfectly done. And as a result, when people come in, they will see that and appreciate that. I don't think Ottawa really had that at the time. And especially something that we created, which was very unique. We had a very European feel. I'm wearing a three-piece
Yeah.
suit. Michelle's dressed to the nines all the time, and we have a European look in our clinic.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And everything is to detail, right? When they come in,
Yeah.
it smells amazing. The floor looks amazing. Michelle has all these fine little details, embossed napkins with our logo. Like it's crazy, but these are the fine details that
I
people
think
will
that's
remember.
important.
I
We
do.
we
100%.
sell beauty, we sell precision, we sell quality. So the entire branding has to look like this. No, I agree on that.
Correct. And the clients, I always sit down and see what they see, and always
Yeah, yeah.
wonder to make sure that
That's
I
what I
can be
do.
in their shoes so that they can just feel at ease. And that's the number one thing that we get is,
Yeah.
oh, you are who you are, and I feel or like I know you when walking into the door, which is
It's like
important.
a sandwich approach, right? Well, you need to have that immediate punch, warm feeling of empathy and also,
Mm-hmm.
welcoming when you come in. The service has to be done very well. And when they leave, it has to be complimented as well. It's like this
Yeah.
sandwich. And, I was very grateful for the previous clinic that I was working at, but whenever I was brought in, they didn't know anything about medical aesthetics, and as a result, they didn't want to know. They wanted me to do absolutely everything. So when clients came in, they were just put to the corner and they're saying, you know, Dan's gonna take care of you, and I would. But even whenever I left afterwards, you know, I'd ask, can you get them an ice pack? They're like, oh, we're really busy. I literally had to do absolutely everything. So the introduction and the ending was missing.
Mhm.
And I knew the impact of that. And as a result, whenever they now came, it was like, oh my gosh, this weight's off my shoulder. And at the same time, you know, anyone who has a conversation with Michele really understands how, you know, she's there, she's present in that conversation, and
Yeah.
she has great conversation with you. Michele, our daughter is very similar, where she can sit there at a party or at an event and not say anything. And but if someone's going to initiate a conversation with her, it's going to be impactful. And that's what all our clients get whenever they come to us, and they have these great conversations with Michele, and they have the service with us, and it's
Yeah.
just it's an amazing
Very
place to be.
Yeah, creating
good.
connections is always important.
Absolutely. It's a people's business. It's
It
all
is.
about relations, definitely, or relationships. Um, Dan and Michele, how you split online business, and I mean YouTube, Instagram, Patreon, and your clinical work? Is it 50-50? And how do you manage it? Is it a few hours per day, or how do you have certain days off where you only focus on online stuff and content creation? How do you manage that?
Mhm.
That's a
It's
good question. It's kind of like, you
a little
know,
bit of both,
a
actually.
little you can't be afraid to work,
Yeah.
right?
No.
So that's basically, it's kind of like before this I had, you know, people are like, how do you have all this time to do it? I'm like, well, before I had this, I had 4 jobs. Like I think I have like just as much work now as I did before, but actually the benefit now is it's all hyper focused into medical aesthetics. Where
Yeah.
before I had 4 separate jobs in different various medical fields, but they were not intertwined at all.
Yeah.
And so I don't really have a system. Now we're getting to the point where we are now getting systematic. And that's important for us because I want to, you know, we are at this another growth spurt, right? So initially was, I just told myself for 3 years, I need to post 1 video per week on YouTube.
Yeah.
And I knew that by doing that, that would grow organically. And also, it would help me grow my Instagram, because Instagram is difficult to grow from zero. It's very difficult to grow. I
Yes.
think people forget that everyone wants to go on Instagram. They open up a business like, oh, I'm going to go on Instagram. And then 5 years later, they still have 500 followers.
It's
It's,
it's
it,
super hard.
it's
Super hard.
it's super difficult. So I understood that YouTube was a place that was searchable, right? So whenever I wanted to learn about medical aesthetics, I went to YouTube too. I was like, is there? And there was really nothing there. There was a couple people that were giving little chiclets of information, but nothing really concrete. It's like, I could do this. I could be that person. And right, it was almost I would like to. I've never asked Tim that, but I think we actually probably started roughly around the same time on
Yeah.
YouTube, kind of having a very similar idea. His was to grow I think his education center or something, and mine was just basically to, at that point, have notoriety, and also I knew it would bring in clients.
Yeah.
What I ended up finding out was probably, I think, 70% of my subscribers were other providers, other plastic surgeons, derms, doctors,
Yeah.
nurses, dentists throughout the world. And I was like, I don't know how that's going to benefit me, but something will happen. And later on, Patreon happened. So the organic route, how it went was I started YouTube. Then eventually people were like, well, you don't post any before and afters, or you show little clips of what you're doing. And I said, well, if you want to see that, go to my Instagram. So that's how
Yes.
I grew my Instagram. I funneled
Yeah.
them over. And then at that point, you know, we were wondering about TikTok, and there was discussion like, should we be doing TikTok dances? Is that a thing? Is that professional? And my answer to that was, if that's part of who you are and you can make it quaint and fun and still somewhat, you know, not super goofy, then it works. But it has to be authentic to you. Then that's just like, you can't create this fake persona. So if you're not a dancer, don't dance. But if that's part of you, right? Look at Shino Bay. Shino Bay is known as this dancer, and he's like owned it. So my older sister taught me how to dance when I was younger, and I've always been a pretty good dancer. So I was like, okay, let's bring that in a little bit, but just have a little fun. And we did little bits of dancing once in a while, but it wasn't all dance. So,
Yeah.
but that would create reels, and that was another way of content. We knew also TikTok was a little different with regards to skincare. People love skincare because a lot of the younger demographic are going to share, comment, like, where everyone's on TikTok, but that younger demographic are the ones that are doing all that stuff. So when you're talking about skincare, that's whenever you grow really quickly. So all of a sudden we were growing on TikTok, growing on Instagram, growing on YouTube for all different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
So
And yeah.
what are your main channels right now? It's definitely YouTube. It's probably Instagram and Patreon. Am I right?
Yeah.
So TikTok is still there, and then those are my main three. But I think in order it still is YouTube, Instagram, then TikTok. But Patreon is a completely different
Yeah.
beast.
Set up.
It's a different right. So whenever we did YouTube, there wasn't much monetization off it. Like, you still don't make that much off ads. I'm not
Yeah.
sure why we don't make that much off of ads in Canada, but it's not that much. And but one day, YouTube ended up sending us a little kind of like message. Hey, by the way, you have enough followers that if you want, we are now including this beta option of having a premium subscription where
Yeah.
people can, pay for content. I'm like, what the heck is that? And my son, who is like, I don't know, 8 at the time, he's involved on like online games. I'm like, do you know what this premium account? He's like, oh yeah, I follow these guys and they have these premium accounts. You can subscribe and they do live things. You could, they've got a Twitch account. I'm like, oh my God, my son knows way more about this than I do. And he's like, yeah, you should do it. He's like, you can get some merch. You can get all these cool things. So I was like, what? And I'm like, wow. And I'm like, well, how could I do that? The whole reason why it was working for me, and one of your questions was, how do you do that with, people in your clinic? Well, that's the reason why I never did it with people in my clinic. First of all, you'd have to get consent. Most of the time, clients don't want consent for international reach. Like if I tell them, by the way, your face is going to be on a YouTube channel, they're going to say no. Plus, you'd have to figure it out prior and then figure it out in the clinic. It would never. It's incredibly difficult to do all that consistently. So what I did was I just did it on a mannequin. I was like, I'm going to show you on a mannequin how I did that. And one day, I think a week after YouTube mentioned that premium subscription, one of the comments was, I wish you did this on real people. I was like, I can't do that. And I was like, oh, okay, wait a second. Maybe I can do this on real people. And maybe because it's going to be for a select group of providers that won't be mass distributed, I think patients or clients would be okay with me, posting this as long as I have a consent form. And that's basically what we did.
Good. Fantastic. As our podcast is related to business, I'm now interested in what is the business idea behind it, and how do you monetize your online activities? Patreon is clear so far, so it's a subscription model. People pay a monthly fee, and you deliver content.
Yeah.
So what is with the other ones? Are these more or less funnels to get people on Patreon, or is it okay?
Correct. Yeah, that's basically the whole plan, right? So I think a lot of people
it's just creating more reach. Different people have different ways to look at social media. Some people, they prefer YouTube, some people prefer Instagram or TikTok, so that at least different channels will give different reaches to different variety of people.
Initially we wanted to, our plan was to grow our clinic and then franchise out, just like most people do. If you grow big enough, then you can have little clinics, a bunch of people injecting. But the longer I'm in this field, and all the more conferences I go to, which is some of the benefit of going to these conferences, a lot of people wonder if it's worth it. But sometimes you get to hear, good presentations from people who are giving you honest truth, which is in this industry, there's a lot of theft.
Yeah.
And there's a ton of headaches, right? To open up your own business and even just hire 1 or 2 people is difficult enough because you got to find the right people. But now imagine, people think that if you just have one successful clinic, the next one's going to be successful. No, it's like starting from zero all over again, and you've got to babysit this clinic, because if you don't, A, it could crumble, which is going to tarnish your reputation. B,
Yeah.
people can be stealing from you, so you've got to be on it. And at the same time, people just take your ideas and leave all the time. So you have to deal with that stuff constantly. And for us, this whole Patreon and this whole online platform really opened up our eyes to say, listen, we can do this with a lot less headaches. We can actually probably make just as much, if not more money, because we have international reach. We're not looking locally anymore. And as a result, I don't have to worry about the headaches of all this overhead. And also with people, we can do this on our own. We just need to keep capitalizing on it. And as a result, we just need to make sure that our clinic is working well, and but really keep a hyper focus on online business.
Let's assume, and probably there are many of our listeners would like to build their personal brand and would like to monetize some kind of online activities. I mean, let's be honest, fame or reach or whatever you want to name it is the new currency. I just had a chat with Tiffany Hall from Aesthetic Next in Dallas, and we talked about speakers and conferences. And you definitely have to invite speakers with big names. There's no way out. They pull in the attendees, and there's a lot of options to monetize your fame, your reach, your
100%.
following, whatever you want to name it. But let's assume someone wants to start. What advice would you give? What road or route should they take? How should they get started, and where to heat?
YouTube. Still YouTube.
Okay.
YouTube is still underutilized. I can't believe how underutilized it is in medical aesthetics. It's utilized for everything else. But it takes a lot of courage and commitment and confidence in order to do that. And capability. Those are the 4 C's, right? So it's, who is it? I forget his name, but there's basically, I heard this from someone. So he's just basically, the key to success in entrepreneurship are those 4 things: confidence, courage, commitment, and capability. And you can, a lot of people kind of get mixed up between confidence and courage. But the difference is basically you need the courage to go make yourself happen on YouTube. And then
Yeah.
once you're consistent on doing that, then you get the confidence. And then the confidence comes because people say that's why you're able to do that. That's what, because you're naturally confident. It's like, no, I'm not. I was terrified doing that. I just made sure that I had all like the I's and the I's dotted and the T's crossed before I was able to do that. But it definitely took a lot of courage to do that. And then with that, it came the confidence.
Would you assume that what should you do on YouTube? Being another injector? Is there still space for being another injector or educator in this field? And even though if I get about 10, 20 followers, subscribers, whatever, is that a way to, I mean, you have to spend a lot of time into it. Would that generate money?
It's not, it's a good question, and it's a difficult one to answer because, first of all, to answer your question, if it's worth going on YouTube and being another injector, how many injectors do you think are on Instagram?
Uh, a
A
million.
billion? Like, I don't know. Like, it's crazy. But how many of them are successful? I don't know. I think there's a ton of them are successful, right? I still think at least 1,000 are successful, and and it ranges from plastic surgeons to derms to nurses to doctors. So if you want to create your own niche, there's definitely a lot of room. And if someone's already doing it, you could be the 100th person doing it. But there's
Yeah.
always someone who wants new and fresh ideas. And also, people relate to different type of personalities. So let's say if you are true to yourself and you have a totally different personality, create that online, and you'll have your own niche of people going your way, and you will be successful. There's a lot of room on YouTube. I think there's like no room on Instagram, and it's a good way to funnel people over to your Instagram anyways if you want to. But more and more countries, including Canada, are moving away from before and after pictures. So you're gonna have to get creative and find your own way to find your space on the internet. TikTok, I don't know what's gonna happen with TikTok. Is it gonna be banned here in North America? I don't know, but
No.
it's YouTube is still number 2, and it's the easiest to search.
Yeah. And then you should decide whether you target patients for a clinic. That could be an option, right? That is a
Yeah.
different approach, or other providers. Interestingly, many injectors, for whatever reason, try to impress other injectors. Where I would say, also on Instagram, I would say, focus on your patients, get them into your clinic. But however, uh, if there's a nurse listening to us and she gets on the journey and she does YouTube videos and she gets super successful, has 30,000, 50,000 followers, what then? What's the next? How can you make a business out of it? Would you would you move on to Patreon? Would you stay on YouTube and have this subscription model they offer? Would you be a speaker? Would you?
It depends what your goal is. And this is like the whole question about your why, right?
Yeah.
So what's your purpose? So for me, I
How
want to be the
about we have
face.
in a circle and talk about the why?
It really is all about your why and your purpose, right? If you have an objective to be the biggest in your city, you're probably going to be miserable, because there's always going to be someone who's fighting for that, and it's definitely something tangible, but there's a lot of competition locally. For me, the beauty of kind of aiming to be the face of Canada is that no one else is really doing that, and if they are, they're probably on board of just like, collaborating, because we're not in direct competition, right? There's lots of
Yeah.
room on the internet. The people who you're going to face competition with are usually going to be local competition, and that's just the way it is in most businesses.
Yeah.
And as a result, the other thing too is that you become more open-minded. You Because I want to be the face of Canada. If someone's trying to be the face of Ottawa, I'm happy for them. I'm like, go, I'm happy. Go be the face of Ottawa. I applaud you. If you want to talk about it, let's talk about it, because that's not my vision. That for that person, they'll have less reach. I'm looking for something completely different. And as a result, other things are going to open up for me on the way up. Right. So
Yeah.
it's not just the
Yeah.
face of, so I have usually like these things that I write out, and it's, I want to be the face of Canada. I think is what I write down. I have like 1 million subscribers on YouTube, 100,000 subscribers on Patreon. I want to make sure that our family's taken care of, our kids are taken care of, our parents are taken care of, and
That's
they're
your goal, or you have
these
already.
are my goals. These
These
are
are
my
yeah.
goals, right? And then you start realizing, man, maybe goals are, almost too small. Let's go bigger. And as a result, whenever you start having these crazy goals, your mind opens up, and then you're gonna start saying like, okay, as you mentioned, what do you do? Do you open a Patreon? Do you start traveling? Do you do everything? It's like, well, if you really want to obtain all those goals, you're probably gonna have to do all those things.
Yeah.
And why not? If you feel that you have enough energy to do it, do it.
Go for it.
It takes courage to do that, and it takes energy, but so does running a small business down to the
Everything.
ground, grinding
Everything.
every day, doing things the hard way and not
You can
getting
choose
anywhere.
your hard. Everything is hard. You can choose your hard.
That's right.
Running a company is hard. Doing nothing is hard because you won't have money and you will suffer from some disease one day. Being famous on YouTube, whatever, is hard. Everything is hard. So you better choose the hard you want to take.
Choose a
Or
hard
you wanna
that's
make-
going to give you the most reward.
Yeah, definitely.
And it
But
doesn't make
let's
you
dive.
feel like work.
Sorry, Michelle, go.
And it
Go
doesn't
ahead.
make it feel like work.
Yeah, I agree. I'm a big fan of the why and purpose and
Yeah.
or nature, whatever you name it, and that's one of my favorite topics.
Mhm.
Perfectly. Let's dive into the numbers. Can you give a brief overview what you can make on revenue on these channels? I assume the most reliable is currently probably Patreon, right?
Yeah,
Because
Patreon. And the thing
or
is,
Patreon, I'm spelling it the wrong way. Well, what is realistic? I know from people like Jub and Julie, she has about, I think, 2,000 or 3,000 subscribers on Patreon. And if you do the calculation and math, that's already impressive, right?
it's tough to say, because so on Patreon you have free subscribers, and
Yeah,
like what people see are the total number of subscribers that you have, right?
yeah,
So if if I haven't checked, but if it's something like 2,500 subscribers, you have no idea. Like, could be half of them are free subscribers, and then
yeah. You
there's
don't know.
tiers,
Yeah,
and then there are tiers. I think it depends on your tier. You can have a $5 tier, you can have a $100 tier, you can have a $200 tier. It really is up to you.
But is it realistic to earn like 20,000
Yeah.
a month from
Yeah,
Patreon,
absolutely.
or is that totally crazy?
Correct.
No, I mean, you know, for us, it grows every single month, and you know, and it's, you know, it's unbelievable. The issue with Patreon is, and that's where, you know, Patreon is what's popular now, but unless Patreon changes or makes some fine-tune changes, I don't know if it's going to be as successful in the future, because there
Okay.
are challenges with Patreon. There's a lot of people who go on, download your stuff, and then leave, right?
Okay,
So
that's
they
awesome. Yeah.
so and there's no way right now for people to have exclusively pay an annual membership. You have to pay monthly.
Okay.
So this is where, for us, the reason why I think people are willing to stay is because I've been giving them free content for the last 2.5, 3 years. And this is
Okay.
kind of like their thank you. Whereas this is why I think a lot of people have issues with Patreon, or whenever they're doing anything on social media, is they go on, they haven't given, you know, their audience or anyone any real valuable tools, and they're just asking for revenue right away.
Yeah.
You
No, it
know,
doesn't
so
work.
you know, Gary Vee says it the best. He has a book. It's like punch, jab, 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 left hook or right hook or something like that. He says you got to give your viewers free content for a while, and then after
Yeah.
that, you ask for something, and they're more than happy to help you out because you've helped them out.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
this is, I think, why ours has become successful, because we've been, you know, grew. I think we're almost near 80,000 subscribers on
Okay,
YouTube
cool.
right now, and we've been giving consistently free content
Content.
that is very, very educational, knowledgeable
To this day.
to this day, and I still do it. And as a result, you know, their little thank you is, they're thanking me for joining, but also whenever they join, it's not like they're just getting the same stuff. I'm now enhancing that viewership by giving them content with real clients in real
Yeah.
time.
Michele, if there are people out there who would like to start a med spa
Yep.
like you did, what is the top 5 advice you would give?
Market research. Know
Yeah.
what you're getting into and where you're going to be. I think creating a vibe that's true to you, making sure
Mhm.
that the client will feel what you feel. Um, what else can I say? Yeah, market research was huge for me. Just to having to an
Start
idea of.
bigger or start smaller, small infrastructure costs. I'm a big fan of starting small.
Yep. I used to work in small businesses, so the bigger the beast, the bigger the headache. So I find clients are
Problem
also looking for more
decrease.
of a niche experience now. They don't want to be a number. They want to be that person to that clinic. So I wanted to have some personal touches to make sure that the client felt attached to us and not just, oh, they don't care. They're just going to take my money and move on.
Yeah.
I think that was super important to us. To this day, Dan's actually last week. He's like, I think we need more rooms. I was like, no, that isn't always the solution to growing your business.
Yeah, I think you're on
Um,
the right track with your online stuff and
yeah,
being,
so it's a combination of things. So making sure that your space is correct for the type of services you're going to have.
yeah,
Start somewhere. You don't need to have all the gadgets and gizmos that exist. We were
yeah,
an injectables clinic only, and actually, we didn't think we would even bring in any modalities, lasers and such,
yeah,
until now. And then at one point, it made no sense. We were giving away our patients to clinics
yeah,
who
yeah.
had these. But start somewhere. Start with your true self, and then being able to showcase that and do it well, versus to try and blast to the world and pretend that things are going to work out.
Great. Dan and Michelle, what is your future plans? What are your future plans?
Good question.
We are constantly
Yeah.
having this discussion, which is fun about, you know, being partners in crime here,
Yeah.
because we're very different. So
Yeah.
Michelle is very methodical.
Yeah,
She's also very safe, right? And
yeah,
which is great. She keeps me grounded. But at the same time, for myself, because I'm this big visionary, I'm the opposite, and that's good and bad. Because for us, if there's any time where we have any kind of disagreements.
Mhm.
It's regards to the plan of growth. We both know that we want to grow, and we both know that we have to do certain things.
Yeah.
Where we slightly disagree sometimes is where the clinic's going to grow, right? So the clinic works great right now, and the thing is that we're in this position where I've done all this legwork to, not only do these YouTube channels and everything in these presentations, but I do regular Instagram lives with top providers in the world, right? And these are top plastic surgeons, top doctors, top nurses who are at the top of their field. And as a result, I've earned their respect, and now I'm recognized as a top provider. And as a result, the conversation that we have is, should I be pricing that at our clinic at this top tier level, or should we kind of be keeping it like pretty affordable, so therefore we're not disgruntling our clients? And this is a conversation that we're still having right now, and the reason why it isn't solidified is because of the growth of online, right? The growth of online has surpassed our online business. So basically, right now, we double our revenue online than we do in our clinic, and it grows every
Why
month.
don't focus on that? Why don't focus on the online?
I think that's so. This is
Exactly.
this is what we're doing. I think so. This is going to be the next gear up. We've already
Lean into what you do well.
cut down to 4 days a week, only because we know that if I have a day off extra for social media, then that's going to grow more online. And then there will likely be a point where I will need to only inject probably twice a week, and therefore we'll have other providers in clinic. And whether it's going to be a membership tier platform or a premium for me versus someone else, I have to do these things in order to lean into the growth of online, because as you mentioned, it is where I'm known, and it's international and it's exponential.
I think you have so much potential, and I'm happy to share that with you when we have dinner here in Switzerland.
Yeah, I
Yes.
appreciate
And I
that.
think you can think in so many directions. You could be some kind of an ambassador for brands if you want. You can be a speaker. You probably will get paid at a certain stage for speaking somewhere, but there's so much potential in being a face for something, whether it's
Yeah.
Canada or whether it's the face of the aesthetic industry, or even if it's a face for a technique only, is it lips or tear trough or whatever. I think there's so much potential, especially for a guy like you or a couple like you who are doing so well on camera and speaking so well and looking so good. So I think it's amazing. I would go in this direction,
I
but
appreciate that.
I leave it with you. It's your decision, but I
And
think
the
that,
thing is a lot of people think that we have all the answers because we've been successful. We're still new. It's only been 2.5 years we've opened this business, and it's been 5 years that I've been doing medical aesthetics. But I think the reason why we have this exponential growth is just because we leaned into our why. We really leaned into
yeah.
the whole purpose of, okay, what do I want here?
Yeah.
Have a clear goal and go for it. And
Yes.
as a result, you're going to make leaps and bounds, and we are making leaps and bounds to the point where we don't know the answers to everything. So I'm
Yeah.
excited to grow.
Good. Fantastic.
But and also understanding who you are, I think, is important.
But that's an ongoing process,
Yeah. Oh,
uh,
completely. But being strong on that and not letting it go.
yeah,
You can always
definitely.
keep reinventing, but that's exhausting. But the bigger you can grow that little brand of yours, the
Yeah,
faster you'll grow.
I agree. And that's what I will talk about at Inner Circle. Um, I'm getting asked a lot about this, and I think that the biggest power you have is self-awareness,
Correct.
understanding yourself in many directions. What is triggering you? What is your fuel? What is your fears? How do you interact with people? How do other people see you?
You're right.
Right? And these questions never stop. I mean, as you know, I'm at 140 employees,
Mm-hmm.
and I haven't realized that they don't see me anymore as Felix, the guy, the just regular guy,
Yeah.
if I'm saying something, this sometimes has such an impact that people start crying and
Yeah.
shivering because the boss said something.
Yeah.
And I think, I'm just Felix. You can, we can have a drink together. I don't understand that for them, I'm a very powerful person.
Right.
And it's
You're an
never
influence.
stopping. Yeah, and since I understand that, I'm not emailing directly anymore to my
Right.
people. I respect the leadership structure we have, but it's a learning process the entire life, and that's the beauty of it, right?
Mm.
Michele and Dan, thank you so much. I have one closing tradition, one last
Yes.
question, which is, what do you think will the aesthetic industry look like in 10 years?
Ooh.
Oh my gosh. Well, definitely AI for me is definitely going to have a huge impact on that. The
How?
How, I mean, so it's going to be kind of like, I don't know, look at iPhone 1, right? When it came out,
Yeah,
it was revolutionary, but at the same time had a lot of glitches. So I think, there's likely going to be some type of robot arm that are going to be injecting people in the face. Will be able to analyze. It'll probably do like some type
okay.
of MRI, analyze exactly where the arteries are. They know exactly what they should be injecting, how much based on volume loss. But
Yeah,
it's going to be a stepping game. It's probably going to be, even if they came out with it next year, right? It's still going to probably be 10 years down the road until people are going to get consistently safe results.
yeah,
So because of all the glitches,
agreed.
and people are, maybe you're definitely going to have people who are going to risk it at first, but you're definitely going to have people who are going to, maybe get hurt as a result or get
Yeah,
unwanted, undesirable effects. But I think 10 years down the road, you definitely are going to have to accept that AI is going to take over.
yeah,
The But not everything. I think that there's definitely going to have to be some type of, like we say, whenever it comes down to business, you can go, but it's the human response. It's that emotion. It's the connection that you're getting with that place. So if
yeah,
you're just going and you're just seeing a bunch of robots, then they're just going to go to the cheapest robot. But if they're going to go to a place that can bring you in, make you feel like family, and at the same time provide a safe, consistent result, and maybe if it's a robot that does that, that's fine. But you're definitely going to have some medical director who's in charge of everything
yeah.
to make sure that everything's done safely.
Very interesting.
The other thing too, which is happening, so I don't, so that's 10 years down the road. What's happening now in the transition to medical aesthetics that I think is happening, and I think this is what we're bringing to the inner circle is, this is why I'm coming with you. I think the mentorship is a big thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
You can have two different types of people. You can have people who, just like sports, I always compare everything to sports, but like basically you can have two types of people who play a sport, like let's say tennis.
Yeah,
You can have someone who's amateur level and they're going to go take coaching from someone who's an amateur and they're going to basically, put in the work that's necessary to become an amateur. But if someone's like, listen, I want to be the best in the world, and they're going to maybe train with someone who has been at the best of the world or is still, imagine that, training with someone who's at the top of their game, known in their field, they're still doing it so they know it's relevant today. That is exponential growth. And then that's the hack of understanding that you may be doing things wrong. You don't have to do things wrong all the time in order to learn. You don't have to reinvent the wheel. When
yeah.
someone knows the answers, they are going to give you the secrets in order to get there much quicker. And I think that the
Yeah, it's
mentorship
interesting.
is huge.
Absolutely, I agree with you, Dan. I think it's interesting because on one track you will see the improvement of AI and robots and whatever,
Mm-hmm.
but I believe on the other hand side, the power of relationships
Human
in
connection.
terms of mentorship
Mm-hmm.
or guidance or going to real life events, seeing people speak you believe in, you feel related to, will become more and more powerful. And we see that all these tiny boutique conferences are getting more and more popular, and people are coming to feel connected, to feel some kind of belonging, and search for guidance and mentorship. Absolutely, I
I think
agree on that.
these big international conferences are unfortunately going to probably slow down, or they're going to have to make major changes.
Yes, that's what I think. I
Like in the
agree.
world of beauty, and they used to have all these major conferences. They no longer do them at all.
Really?
They weren't
Yeah,
profitable. No,
Yeah.
like people stopped going to them because there was no more interactions. All they were seeing is someone's trying to sell me something.
That's basically
yeah,
what's happening now
Yeah, so it's just a
in
question
medical
of
aesthetics.
changing
I
that,
agree.
going back to that
Yeah.
human connection and like that small boutique experience. And I think that's why I have said this for the last 10 years. The bigger the place, not necessarily the better the thing.
I agree.
Hmm.
That's so interesting to chat with you. Thank you so much. That
Thank
was
you,
an
Felix.
amazing podcast. It's always, you have so much gold and value to give. So I'm super honored to have you here for Inner Circle. I can't wait to host you here. And I'm super happy you're staying a few more days so
Yes.
we can
Yeah,
have a
we're gonna
lovely
enjoy the
dinner there.
experience.
Great.
You'll have to
Thank you
share
so much.
somewhere to go.
Yeah, we will, and
Yeah.
we'll have a good time. No worries about that. So, see you soon.
See you
Thank you for
soon.
your time, and
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
speak soon again. Bye bye. Thank you. Have a great day.
Take care.